Hey everybody, KC here. So a morning newsbeat reader named Rich Highland, who I like to refer to as the only morning newsbeat reader that I know of who has actually won the Pulitzer Prize, sent me an article the other day that I thought was really, really interesting. And in it, Faith Popcorn, the well-known futurist, wrote, "In the future, more people will be staying home. Environmental disaster, political tumult, and economic precarity will fuel Americans' sense of reclusion and retreat. Cooking, nesting, home delivery services, and quality time will ascend. We'll curl up with loved ones and technologies in our bunkers, watching the world through windows and screens." And boy, doesn't that sound familiar, right? Boy, did she get it right. Except one of the things that the article points out is that Faith Popcorn wrote that in 1987, and she was referring to 1990. So, okay, she got it. Maybe she was only about 30 years off, but she got it. Because that sounds an awful lot like our lives today. But the thing is, I mean, it's fascinating in some ways because the technologies that exist today certainly didn't exist in 1987 or 1990 that would have made all those things possible. And in fact has made, I don't know if it's reclusion, but the fact that we're all been spending a lot of time at home a lot more bearable. I mean, think about it for a second. I did a little research, and in 1990, they didn't have text messaging. They didn't have cell phones. They didn't have DVDs. And if I said to you, streaming video, you immediately would have run thinking that a pipe burst and there was going to be a flood that was going to ruin your videos from Blockbuster. In 1990, Steve Jobs hadn't gone back to Apple, where he was going to revolutionize the company. In 1990, Reed Hastings was working at his first job out of school at a software company called Adaptive Technology. And Jeff Bezos, well, in 1990, he was working at a hedge fund called D.E. Shaw and Company. So, and all these people really changed the world and basically changed the way in which we are interacting with the world at a time when we're home and interacting more via screens than we are in person. It's interesting. One of the things, it occurs to me that, from the beginning, one of the arguments that we've been making here on Morning Newsbeat is that it was critical for businesses to think about the idea that they had to be different in some fundamental way coming out of the pandemic than they were going in. That if they were the same company going out of the pandemic as they were going in, probably they were going to be in a non-competitive position. And listen, just before I decided to record this, a story crossed the wires that actually made that point. It was from Variety. And basically it said the following, that Warner Brothers' entire 2021 slate, a list of films that includes The Matrix 4, Denis Villeneuve's Dune remake, Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical adaptation of In the Heights, The Sopranos prequel, The Many Saints of Newark, and The Suicide Squad, all will debut both on HBO Max, streaming, and in theaters on their respective release date. As Variety puts it, this shocking move to simultaneously release movies day and date underscores the crisis facing movie theaters and the rising importance of streaming services in the wake of a global health crisis that has decimated the film exhibition community. This is an industry that is an industry that clearly is making dramatic changes. Now, Warner Brothers is saying this is a one-year thing. It's hard for me to imagine that it's just 1 year because, once you've established this precedent, people are going to change. I do think it's important to remember that, listen, while we're all viewing the world and interacting with the world in different kind of ways, there's both upside and downside with that. Because on one hand, technology has actually allowed us to connect to each other in ways that we would not have been able to connect had this pandemic happened in 1987. On the other hand, we all know there's a downside. For that, I refer you to the movie on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Unbelievable movie about social networking. And by the way, Tom Furphy and I will be talking about that in our next innovation conversation. But it is a fascinating world. And again, it becomes incumbent on us as consumers and us as business people to figure out how we're going to handle this enormous change in a responsible and relevant and resonant way. You know, if businesses are going to change in such fundamental ways as we see Warner Brothers is changing their business model, don't think for a second that any of us are immune from the forces that are changing the world. You're never immune. You may be ignorant of the changes and how they're going to affect you, but you're not immune. I'm not, you're not, and that's the thing we have to figure out on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning, and as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.